Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Distance DevOps. This week we had Chris Short talking about his Amazon billing and how things can go wrong very quickly. Fascinating topic because we talk about just what can happen, how to prevent it, and sort of the broader challenge that you have with managing your bill. And important housekeeping, we are moving this weekly DevOps Days scheduling link to the Cloud 2030 community. So please join us there. We're going to be talking topics, putting sessions there, recordings. There's a lot more going on that site than from that Racket homepage. So Distance DevOps is growing up, becoming part of a bigger thing. And we hope you will come and join us and be part of making the Cloud 2030 community amazing.
You want to get started on talking about
Yeah,
AWS
no,
horror
let's go.
stories?
Go. You've got the mic anyway. So Chris, give us some background. Tell us. I do think it's worth bringing everybody up to speed on the communities you've been building too. And so
Sure. So I'm Chris Short. I work at Red Hat. I'm on the OpenShift team there. I also have a property called OpenShift.tv that I help manage, as well as I am a CNCF ambassador, which also means since I'm a newsletter writer, I also help curate Cube Weekly, and I write the newsletter DevOpsish. On top of all of that, I'm a disabled veteran too. I spent 11 years in the Air Force, and I live outside of the Detroit metro area with my son and wife. I have a daughter also in school at the University of Cincinnati right now. So hence the Cincinnati Bearcat flag right there. But yeah, I grew up in the bowels of Florida, so that's all the Gator gear. But I've had websites and various things across the internet for decades now, and years ago, long before Cloudflare had restrictions on anything practically, I stood up what I called cdn.chrisshort.net, and it still exists today. And it's just for files that are just too big to put in Git, or too you don't want it to be served from just one location. And I want to utilize the backbone of Cloudflare to serve out things from an S3 bucket, essentially, right? So S3 bucket is public, but I've never had an issue with people hitting the origin of the S3 bucket, like ever. So I did not even have it locked down to the Cloudflare IP addresses when the incident we're going to talk about today happened. So this CDN, this S3 bucket, had less than 300 files in it. It's JPEGs, it's PDFs, some larger MP4s, maybe some MP3 recordings, stuff like that, right? Like, I try to build my website as like an archive for like my grandchildren, essentially, to like go back through time and see all the stuff that granddad did, right? Like when he worked in a public, facing fashion. So it's like a museum of sorts. So I store a lot of stuff, and it gets linked, and it rarely gets downloaded, and no big deal. So, did my camera just freeze? Sorry. If it did.
oh yeah, it did.
Hang on, I'll fix that. Let's try that now. Oh, it is totally hosed. Sweet. Switching to guns. Let's see, where are you settings?
It's interesting. Did you use a video paused graphic, or is that because
That
you're
is
using
actually
OBS?
the app that's broken.
Okay.
So I use my phone. Oh, it's because someone was calling me. That'll do it every time. Yes. So I use my phone as my camera. So that's a issue I need to fix. Anyways, sorry about that. Darn you, do not disturb, not activating. So one day at work, I have this bucket. It's out there. It does what it does. It's been doing what it's doing for years. It's cost me pennies, no big deal. So one day at work, a buddy of mine's like, hey, you're handy with Windows and good with, moving big files around the internet. I need a Windows SQL image, at least trial licensed, but totally patched to run in OpenShift virtualization. Or at the time, it was just CNV, Container Native Virtualization, which is based on KubeVirt. So I said, okay, cool, no problem. I'll throw it in this bucket. Here's a link to it. The link was through Cloudflare, because I didn't think anything of it, right? And Cloudflare wasn't going to cache it. Even if it did, it was only 13 gigs, and it was one coworker. No big deal, right? Well, the link got shared and shared around some more and shared around some more. And then lo and behold, June 23rd and 24th, an event occurred, probably some broken CI somewhere in the European region, maybe, or APAC. We don't know. It was definitely not US based because of the time zone offset. It like rolled over a night, basically. Something went out of control and downloaded this file thousands of times. So a few lessons learned from that. That'll download, you download a 13 gig file 2,392 times. That equals around 31 terabytes. Which 31 terabytes of egress from S3 is not cheap at all. As a matter of fact, it's just under $2,700. So on July 4th, when my bill showed up, because I did not have alerting turned on, because I've never had a problem with this bucket ever, and even if I did have alerting turned on, it would have occurred, I would have gotten an alert 8 hours after the fact. It would have been in the middle of the night. It would have been another few hours before I could have gotten to it. I still would have racked up probably $1,800, you know, so not quite my mortgage, you know, but almost my mortgage. So yeah, regardless, this was just an out of control situation that I should have managed better, right? So, but there were some lessons learned, right? Like don't mix personal and work stuff, right? Like right off the bat, stupid idea. Should have known better. Should have learned that lesson long ago, or should have, you know, remembered that lesson from long ago. Second, Cloudflare only caches files up to 512 megabytes for business people too. Enterprise customers, I think, get 5 gigs, according to Waleed. Oh. So even if I was an enterprise Cloudflare customer, they were still going to send all the requests to Origin and not cache a single thing, because it was also not a supported file format. Now, another interesting wrinkle that I learned through working with AWS the past few weeks is that it was definitely something downloading it that was written in Go, because it just had this Go user agent. But it was downloading it as a multi-part download, which means it's supposed to just grab a section of the file and, you know, store that to disk and grab another section and store that to disk, and then eventually get the whole file as a multi-part get. Cloudflare serves up multi-part gets from S3 as full gets. So instead of sending, you know, like 100 megs, it sent the full 13 gigs. And then the client didn't know what to do with that, so it dropped it on the floor and tried again and tried again and tried again. Yeah. So that's how we racked up $2,600 and change in an AWS bill. So needless to say,
so this
July 4th was a scary morning.
It could have just been like
it literally could have been one cluster just trying to spin up a couple of VMs.
And re-downloading it 100 times each.
Trying to do multi-part gets. Yeah. Part. It literally could have been like one person trying to do this. That's the scary part, right? Like one person caused this bill. And, you know, to an enterprise, $2,600 probably would be, you know, a drop in the bucket, right? Like no big deal. But to a personal, you know, customer, that is something to behold, because now there's all these sharp edges around Cloudflare that you have to worry about, where normally in my, you know, in my omission, I did not read the updated, you know, terms of service every time they came out over the years. You know, I've been using Cloudflare forever, never realized there was a restriction that they put in place, you know, and this finally bit me because of this one-off use case that never should have happened to begin with, because I should have just dropped the damn thing in Google Drive, where, you know, we put our enterprise files and let Google deal with it. Right. And it also would not have been directly internet accessible. That was the main reason why I didn't do it. So yeah, the coworker needed it to be internet accessible.
Did you have any idea that it was getting, you know, was linked so deeply?
No, I had no idea that it was shared across so many people, or that it was being used so frequently, right? Like I could probably, if in my next, iteration of the CDN, I will be able to log exactly where these requests are coming from, and I'm hoping that at
Right.
some point I'll find the person that is looking for this random QCOW
Because they'll be the 404.
file.
So I'm assuming you immediately remove the file
Immediately
and
remove
wrote.
the files was step one, because I was like, there's only one thing in this bucket that has like changed significantly in the past month, right? Like I don't put stuff in that bucket often, right? Like it's not like every day I'm writing blog posts and uploading assets, right? Like
Right.
it was only
So
a
wait,
few hundred assets.
this was a new file. Okay. I like when
Hmm.
I read your stuff, I had assumed that this was like a sleeper file from a year ago.
No. I mean, it had been there for
Okay.
months, but I'd forgotten about it. It was long enough for me to have not realized that it was there and, still potentially explosive, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You fire and forget sometimes. Willie dropped it in chat, the exact language there.
Would it have been better if you had given them a direct link to the S3 bucket instead of Cloudflare?
If only if, and I don't know if if it came from AWS, that would have been the only way it would have actually like been better, right? Like if the customer or person or whoever was trying to stand up a cluster inside AWS and requested it directly to S3, it would have been free, right? It's because it was egress out through the internet. That's why it costs money.
Right. I guess I'm thinking that if you so like we have a whole bunch of stuff in S3 buckets, and one of the things that we and actually there's a whole little story on this, but Cloudflare's handy if you're globally caching, but for something big, I'd be like, you're going to haul it across the backbone of the internet. Have a great day. I guess I'm curious about why give out the Cloudflare link instead of the S3 link?
Okay. Didn't think otherwise, right? Like it's like the bucket cdn.chrisshort.net. That's what I've always used, right? Gotcha. I mean, it's literally what I've used for decades. I mean, seriously, like
I've so not you think of that as your website, right? So your website.
Yeah, like I basically think of it as another part of the website, right? Like it's just that static bucket that just sits there, because right now my website is like a Hugo deployed static site through Netlify. So I need some places to store things that Get LFS can't even, handle very well, right? Because Get LFS is kind of flaky when it comes to, web pages too, right? I don't necessarily want to be pushing hundreds of gigs of Git around the internet either. So, yeah. But yeah, it was a shocking experience. AWS made some mistakes too on their part, right? Like they made a phone call that got flagged as suspicious by not by my like flagging app, but by Verizon, right? Like it came through the Verizon network that this was a suspicious number. And so I answered it anyway, knowing that it was Seattle, right? The area code. And it's like, okay. And it was a very, very, very bad link, right? Like I think that's why Verizon maybe like it came through some cell network, but I could tell it was maybe an AWS like employee, maybe, but because it was so public, I could not be certain and could not get like a good way to verify like cleanly because of the bad connection. So like, but when I reached out to my connection on the back end, they were like, there's no reason for them to pick up the phone and call you. And they didn't put in the ticket why they needed to call you. So that's weird.
This was
so
after
yeah, like, I mean, this is
public.
So, yeah, this is after it had gone public. So it was, this was like July, like 5th or 6th at this point, right? Like, it was during the holiday weekend, I think, or right after. But it had already gone public. I'd already filed a ticket. We'd already been working. This is what I've done to mitigate. This is what I've done to make sure it doesn't happen again, kind of thing. We'd already been doing that whole deal. And then this phone call out of the blue happened, which made it even more suspicious. And now it's like, holy crap, do I need to be worried about getting phished now? Right? Like, oh, great. It's like all these things. Like if you reveal your back end, now people know like how to get, some extra information about you. Right. So just sharing some technical details could make you a potential, spear phishing, contact victim. So, that was my mode of thinking at the time. It was actually a legit employee that, was calling, but they had no reason potentially to call, right? Like they didn't put anything in the ticket. So, whatever. It was just the nature of it all, my anxiety, like dealing with the PTSD and everything, right? Like it triggered a whole bunch of emotions that like I hadn't felt in a long time. And it was just like crisis mode for like a week. So that was like hard to deal with for a while, but luckily Corey Quinn jumped in. He was like, let me do a full analysis. Let me make sure you used it as intended, but something went horribly wrong, right? Like somewhere. And that's when we started doing some digging and finding, the 512 limit on Cloudflare that would have just immediately threw me out. But then like the multi-part get problem and the fact that, we were sending full copies of the file when only parts of it were being requested. That right there is a bug that like Cloudflare and S3 need to figure out together, because that's not good. I know that you're probably not going to be wanting to cache 13 gig, files on a regular basis, Cloudflare, but if somebody's asking for a multi-part of it, you can't deliver the full thing. And I don't know where that problem lives, if it's somewhere in the S3 world or the Cloudflare world, but it needs to get worked on and looked at. I know that.
That's a serious, I mean, that to me, when you look at it, when you come back and you're like, and when Corey's looking at the bill, it's like, dude, this is not me. Fix your,
right.
Right. Hey, I made a mistake, but y'all need to figure that out too, because
right. Like I did not get like some massive influx of traffic, right? Like I fully disclose all analytics for all of my web properties. You can go to my projects page on chrisshort.net. You can click on every single one of them. You can look at the days. There was no spike in activity, nothing. Like I didn't get a dime out of it until I published the blog post. I got a lot of traffic, but but it definitely did not cover the damn AWS bill even after the reduction. So it was an unfortunate learning experience that, I hope others will learn from. If you have publicly available content, you can use archive.org to cache it, right? Like if it's already publicly available and, you want it out there forever and an eternity, that's what archive.org is there for. So I put a couple files out there that were too big for the time being, started donating $5 a month for them, basically to just host it. And, I'll take the write-off on my taxes, but, archive.org gets another donator, right? That's a good deal for them. And then, now I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is the right solution for me long-term, right? Like Cloudflare, I don't necessarily trust anymore to do the right thing when it comes to, files, right, of a certain size. So it's like, okay. And then I have these other files that are like 600, 700 megs. It's like, I need something that can cache a gig. That'd be nice. So it's like all these services will do it. It's just horribly complex.
Do you really need it cached?
Do I really need it cached is a question, right? Like, no, I don't necessarily need it cached. But here's the thing. If all of a sudden an old article gets really popular and some old asset gets spun up, right? Like I get hit with a big bill. So that's what I'm trying to prevent, right? Getting hit with the big bill.
Well, but I mean, so you're publishing assets, and this is really relevant. You'll talk about what we're trying to do to control some of this, but you're talking about publishing an article where there's a gig a larger file.
Well, let's say there's like a 30 meg PDF file, right? Like that gets downloaded 1,000 times, 15,000 times, 25,000 times. I mean, you're talking web scale sometimes. That's going to get expensive if you're serving it straight from S3, right? Like,
but I mean, to me, that's a different use case than something that gets pulled into an automated. Like, I mean, this is where I look at like the Docker container stuff, and like Docker cloud's got to be going nuts, because the number of times when I do a Docker pull and they download a whole bunch of stuff to me, it's like, all right, and there's so many, and how often do people actually set up like a local repository?
Never.
Never. And so I'm spinning up 100 machines and all of them go to Docker Hub when they shouldn't, but it doesn't cost me anything. So who cares? Woohoo!
Didn't cost you anything.
Yeah, that something's
It doesn't
really
cost you a nickel. Yeah. I mean, somebody, obviously, they're paying a CloudFront bill somewhere, right?
yeah.
It's cash somewhere. It might be Fastly, could be anywhere, but it's cash somewhere. I promise you, all those Docker images, and they're served over a CDN just like everything else, right? So,
Yeah.
it's it's a problem, right? Like serving even small files on a global scale is a problem because when it all adds up, it's bandwidth, right? Like it all adds up to somebody's got to pay for this at some point.
Yeah.
There was enough images in the article itself to actually trigger a billing alert or a 50%, thing from Netlify. Like you've hit 50% capacity for your bandwidth. For a static website, that's pretty damn impressive.
That was a nice run. Yeah. Do you know how many hits you got on the article?
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick. I mean, obviously, if you're blocking like Java and crap, I might not catch it. But let's see. Pull up the right website here. Yeah, let's go back. Oh yeah, all time 70,000 hits, 70,000 views, page views.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all the images for, evidence was there.
Right. You produced a lot
yeah.
of materials in that. Yeah.
Right. So just even that alone, right? Like on top of the regular web traffic that I normally get from just having a website, around for so long, added up to 50% of my Netlify capacity this month. It's just a blog post, folks. It's just text and images, right? Like it's just text and images.
Yeah.
Like if no one pays for my website other than me, right? Like that comes out of my pocket, and it has been the one thing that has advanced my career the most. So that's why I keep doing it, and that's why I keep running it, right? Like it makes the most sense to me to do that. So for an event like this to occur, it just like was mind blowing to me that a personal website or personal anything could do this. Well, it's because I intermix work stuff.
Right. Well, and I mean, you hit, and this is, I mean, what's fascinating to me about this, there's all sorts of interesting postmortem discussions, right? You hit Quinny, Corey Fig is, remarkable from that helped amplify what's going on. You hit a week, you hit a holiday weekend with it's a personal story, right? We've all been there to one extent or another. That's a pretty significant spike. But I look at the Amazon bill, but we use 6 or 7 different hosting type services, and it's so easy to have something go where you're like, oh crap, somebody left the water on all week or all month.
Well, yeah, like I'll use rigs for streaming, for OpenShift TV in Azure sometimes. And, if I leave one on over the weekend, they're $30, that you didn't need to spend, right? Like, whoops.
Yeah,
I need to write some Ansible, I just need to write an Ansible script that just like 7 p.m. every day just goes and reaps out all the VMs from that one account,
That's what it's the thing about stopping, and this was, I don't remember where it was, whether it was here or another meeting I was on. Somebody was like, I thought stopping a VM was stop the billing. And I'm like, oh no, if it's destroyed, you're good. But if you're not,
you got to destroy the snapshots. You got to destroy the disks. You got to make sure it's all gone, right? Like,
yeah, I had I was playing with VPC and I built a load balancer, and I finally went back through the AWS bill, and I'm like, all right, what the hell is causing? I don't have any machines out there. What's causing this region to have $10 a month, $15 a month in fees?
Right, like when you're spelunking for $20. That's like hard.
Yeah,
it's hard, but you've got to, it's stuff that you have to manage, because if you don't, it gets out of control, and it's just game over, right? Like it's here's your $2,700 bill, or here's your $2,700 worth of activity within 23 hours, right? Like maybe you would have gotten an alert on that if you had proper alerting set up, maybe within time, but probably not.
No.
There's a
It's,
8 to 48 hour lag according to Corey Quinn. So, I mean, just 8 hours of that would have been insane.
if you're driving something really hard, yeah. This
Yeah.
is one of the discussions we have in the team, because for us, we're always consuming ISOs,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So we
Yeah.
OS ISOs, and we had somebody new show up in the team because they're forever not like Red Hat or Ubuntu, um, release a new version of the whatever
Mm.
and deprecate all the old versions. So we'll wake up one morning and CentOS 8.3 is no longer available and 8.4 is there, and you
Oh,
got to
yeah.
roll it. And so he was like, well, why don't you just host those ISOs in
Don't you have a
S3 and let just there'll be permanent links. And we're like, because we would become the reliable source for that ISO.
right? You don't want to be number one for certain things, right? Like I had a PDF that got directly linked on Reddit
Oh
one
no.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that was no good for me, right? Like I'm spending all this money on S3, but I'm not getting anything back out of it. Oh, here's your rewrite. Here's your
That's right.
redirect to a page with an ad on it, and that
Yeah.
PDF is now embedded. Seriously, like
Oh, that's smart.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to serve up files for free, folks. I mean, that's not my business. I mean, that it's a personal website. You want to deep link something that's on the CDN, great, but don't be surprised if it gets popular, it gets like swapped out for something else, right?
How fast do you find stuff like that? Do you
Pretty
monitor
quick,
your
right? Like, I
CDN?
mean, I check the analytics every day, right? So,
Okay.
like, if I see something like out of skew on a day, like I usually, before I go to bed every night, I'll just run through like this last string of like sysadmin and marketing news apps type thing, and
Hmm.
I'll look at today for certain websites and just see if anything's out of skew or something blew up or some new sites link into it or whatever. It's just always interesting to see those stats more live than in aggregate, because you see those little like links and people noticing you kind of thing from smaller blogs and stuff, which is kind of
Okay.
cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to like have a shocking AWS bill, right? It's another thing to have mental health problems and have a shocking AWS bill, right? Especially when the bill is more than your mortgage and you're the only person that can do anything about it in the entire household. You can't call for help, right? Like there's no one else in home that's going to help you with this. You're it, right? And you've got to solve this problem, and your spouse is looking at you like, I think you can do this, honey, but you got to do it, right? Like
I,
we can't afford this.
well, I mean, at some point you just like turn it all off. Just a big stop button, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And then
I
do the
did that
diagnostics
a
of it.
while ago, but then I got bit by it, right? Like I had to do that in 2007 when I got divorced. I basically like
Okay.
all the websites I had, I couldn't afford to run anymore. And it was just like, oh, okay, like this is interesting. I don't ever want to go back to that again. That's why I use stuff like Netlify and Cloudflare and,
Okay.
cheap S3 buckets and, so if like all of a sudden all my web properties went away, like that would be detrimental, right? Like that would not be a good look for
That would
me,
be
right?
bad.
Like I
Yeah.
would be essentially undiscoverable, like for my job, for what I do, or who I am. Not having an online presence is not an option. All right.
And you
So
also don't want it to be your employer doing it for you. You want to, right? These are your
bingo. I want to
assets.
own it myself.
Mhm.
Right. Like I want to own it myself. Right. Like I don't mind, like I have no problem doing stuff for work, right? And it being owned by work. But the stuff that I write, the stuff that I do, the things that I produce, I would like to have control of that. And that I think makes perfect sense, right? That's why I don't recommend people use Medium. You don't have control over who sees your stuff. You don't have
Mhm.
control over your own content, how it looks or how it feels or anything like that, and my newsletter started out on Medium, and then eventually I moved it over to Netlify because it just made more sense, and I wanted to use Hugo anyway because I was using it with all my other sites. So yeah, um, static sites are great, but they can be expensive if they get hit a lot. That's the problem. It's always about scale, right? It's you can build out this tiniest little thing, but if it gets hit a ton, it's going to cost you
Yeah.
money somehow.
That makes sense. What do you think the balance is between like breaking deep links versus, driving people back to the core? Because I mean, to an extent, some of this problem to me is a deep linking problem. Right? Because
Mhm.
you would.
Like, keep in mind that the link to the QCOW file that blew up my S3 bucket bill, like that was
Yeah.
not public. That was Red Hat only, right? Like that was just like
God,
one
okay.
coworker or two coworkers had that, right? Like they might have shared it out to a couple of people, and then it kind of blew up, and I forgot about it. But whatever, right? Like that wasn't public. There's nothing public about that. The fact that it was publicly accessible was the problem. And even if I had restricted it down to just Cloudflare accessible, they were going to Cloudflare. So
Right.
it would have got served up that way anyway.
Have you looked into doing short time or special purpose links?
Um, I mean, I could, I guess. No, I haven't. It's a worthwhile thought, but to be honest with you, when the coworker's specific use case was he was doing a Kodi demo, and like he was practicing the demo. He was going to use, he was going to download this thing maybe once or twice, but he needed to do it live during the demo, right? So it needed to sit out there for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like okay, a month. Well, that's a lot of exposure time for a 13 gig file.
Yeah.
Even with a month-long temporary link, right? Or even if I set the asset to expire after 45 days, which is actually what I should have done. I should have retired the asset.
Yep.
How is that? Yeah, this app. Yeah, I paid $40 for this app. It's totally. Anytime someone texts me, calls me, anything.
Yeah.
No.
Zoom does that to me when I'm using the phone app. It drives me nuts. If I get a phone call while I'm on Zoom, Zoom decides to pause my audio, and if I answer it, then I will not be able to get my mic back. So it's insane, and I have to leave. I can hear, but I have to leave the conference and come back in. So
oh, jeez.
That's why I use my desktop. I have a nice rig on my desktop. So
yeah.
But, yeah, there's I mean, obviously it's funny because your blog post was really timely for us because we were having this discussion internally about hosting files and basically saying F no, we're not gonna
yeah,
don't even put them in there. And sometimes we have
not even in a private bucket, right? Like if you don't want it on the internet, don't put it on the internet, right? Like that's the biggest story, right? Like you have to move something across the internet. That's one thing, right?
So
but don't put it on the internet and make it public.
So here's what we did, and if people want, I mean, I can ask our engineer who did it to.
I'm curious what you did.
And it would be a whole lunch session.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. So it's probably worth doing a lunch and learn to share it.
Yeah.
Amazon has an API out of S3 that will create single-use, short-term, or restricted use URLs for objects.
Interesting. Okay.
And so what he was able to do is using that API, you can request access to a file and provide somebody with a link that has a time and is like has restrictions in it. There's a whole bunch of options on it.
Right.
And then so for that now, because we have times where like we have to download a VMware
VMDK or whatever.
ISO,
ISOs, anything.
We want anything. Tons of like
OVAs.
Most of our stuff is small. So like the plugins and content packs are all small enough to get cached, and we don't stress on it too much.
Right.
But the ISOs and the OVAs are much different.
Those are big. They're gigs. They're gigs of data sometimes.
Well, and they're also not things that we're allowed to share technically. Even something like for us, the Mega RAID CLI, distributing that is something that we can't repost their ISOs.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you got to be super careful.
They're utilities. So so we don't, that can't be in a in a in a public bucket. And so what we're doing is we've set it up, and this is still really new, so it's just rolling out. But if you are an authenticated user, we can give you a special a file. So there's a couple ways we can control that. And then that allows you to then download from our S3 bucket using that individual URL. And in those cases, it's like, yeah, we're going to pay for the downloads, but it's not, an open tap.
Right. It's a download or a few downloads, right?
To a person who's been authenticated as a known individual.
Right.
From that perspective.
Yeah.
That was what, so when you were going through that, I'm like, okay, shoot, I'm sure we're still exposed on something.
Yeah. And you never know, right? I scrubbed that bucket and made sure that nothing big was in there, nothing that would be, uncacheable by Cloudflare was in there. And then I went and put the IP restrictions in for Cloudflare. So you can only hit that bucket through Cloudflare. So it should be cached.
Think about, yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? All of a sudden Cloudflare can be like, wow, you've blown through, 2 terabytes of cache data. We're not going to support you anymore. Bye. You're off the platform.
Well, yeah, because this is like where Cloudflare is. I found it to be super opaque from that perspective.
They were just we can't help you. Sorry.
But even knowing there are some statistics, like you can see what's getting hit, but it's sort of like until something breaks, you don't know what it's actually getting passed through.
Right. You don't know what's getting requested. You don't know what's actually being served. You have no logs unless you're an actual enterprise customer or whatever, business customer. And even then it's 7 days. So I would not have been able to go back in time and see these logs. Cloudflare would have done nothing for me at that point. I think I would have had to put in a special request. But here's the thing, they have the data because cops aren't putting in subpoena within 14 days, right, of some crime happening, right? They have those logs for criminal purposes, right? For legal reasons, they have logs of what data went through their platform. They do somewhere.
I know that in CloudFront, using Amazon's CDN, we get Apache type logging of every request also to an S3 bucket, which then I can query through Athena, which lets me query all those logs using SQL.
Yeah, but it's I don't even that's overkill for me, right? I don't want to query my logs with SQL. I want Webalizer or one of those old school tools to just
but
look
it
at the
gives me
bucket
Apache
and
format logging.
Yeah, that's it.
I
Right?
can download the files from S3.
Yeah, and I can just grab that and go, right? That might be my solution, right? I just start buying CloudFront, and just deal with that bill. So
how hard was that to set up? Setting it up for mortals?
Oh yeah.
To set up CloudFront logging is a V.
It's a click.
It's a checkbox. You point it to an S3 bucket where to write to. Tell it whether you want it to write the logs every minute or every 60 minutes, something like that.
Actually, I think we have something.
I enable the logging, on the bucket
I
too.
don't think we monitor. Shane would know better than I would.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you got to store the logs. You got to cycle the logs. You still got to manage the logs, right?
Think of how much you pay to pull the logs.
Well, that's the thing is their logging goes to an S3 bucket only.
Right. Right.
And yes, we have it turned on, Rob, on some of our buckets.
I figure I know we have it on some things. I don't think we do a lot of analysis.
Not on everything.
Yeah.
It just came to a point for us that we write hundreds of gigs of CloudFront logs. That the only way to find something is with SQL.
Dang. Well, yeah. At that point, I would want Athena, but some of these logs, I don't know how often I'm dropping these things. Oh, these are every few minutes. Some of these logs are empty, right? Some of these files are just 0 byte files, right? Or near 0. So I don't need that kind of analysis, right? Some of these files are at most 3K, 4K. I don't need that kind of. No. It's weird.
This is to me where it starts getting interesting. Shane, go ahead.
I was just going to say that AWS S3 logging also explicitly states that they do not guarantee log delivery. So you don't know if they've dropped logs or not whenever they felt like it.
Ah, that's awesome. That's great. That's good to know.
What's that called? At most once delivery.
At least at most
least
once
it must-
delivered.
At
Nice.
most one deliver.
Jeez.
This is what's stunning to me. As excited as we are about all this technology, it still feels like, you know, the leading provider is just dumped a couple of services together, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, but here's the thing. Like, people are scanning my S3 bucket, and now I'm storing logs of like 404s.
Oh, because you were so public about it, so now people are scanning.
Now
it.
people are like scanning it like it's something.
404s or 503s?
404s.
403s.
Oh, 503s or whatever. 403s,
They
the
send- they
not
send back
authorized.
403s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
404
like-
no
that's-
such lifecycle configuration. But yeah, like,
That's the type. That I get hit with every new sysadmin I get is like, why am I getting 403 on S3 buckets all the time?
well, you're not authorized.
It's like the files. That must mean the file's there, but I don't have access to it. No. Just S3 just returns 403s.
Which they should do.
So you
They
guys
should.
are
Yeah, and this is just some
reinforcing-
Java client scanning my S3 bucket.
You guys are just reinforcing my opinion of Amazon being just a giant kludge, and whenever something seems useful, they push it out.
Yep, they do. Like, look at Elasticache. That's my #1 most hated service ever, right? Whenever you have a problem with Elasticache, it takes hours to fix. It's because it's duct tape and bubble gum.
Yep.
And that's a product. It's good
Not
enough.
only that, we get clued in on early roadmap items, and some of them just are products that just make no sense. And they start telling us about how they're going to build something, and they really don't know what they're going to build yet.
No, they don't. They have an idea that a customer is doing this thing that kind of looks like this. Maybe, hey, here you go. Try that out, customer.
Oh, it's probably just AT&T saying, we really need this.
You're probably right. It's probably one customer saying, we want this,
Right.
and they productize it. Yeah.
I think they came to us in order to know what to build. They're like, what would you like to see in this type of product?
Let's create a
Whoa.
sandbox.
That's when you know. Well, so that's interesting, right? When I
We're
was
not a small AWS customer, I should point out.
Yeah. Like, that was when I was at a place I was consulting. A certain cloud provider came in and said, "So if you wanted a service from us, what would you need?" And like, these are like bleeding edge cloud folks, and they're like, "What do you mean a mainframe? Like, how do you talk to that? Can we, are there APIs for that?" It's like, okay, yeah, all right. These are the people building clouds. Got it.
Yeah, that,
No,
that's
this is-
my view of the world of clouds out there, unfortunately.
Hmm.
I mean, when you think about what they've got and what they're doing, part of their competitive advantage is that's the playground. And if you're watching what people are doing and what works, you get enough of a sample size, and you're good at listening. This was short story on that. Like 10 years ago when I was at Dell, we were working with Joyent. Back in the days when they were doing Solaris zones, which sound a lot like containers.
Oh, what are those? Those sound
yeah,
like
who
containers.
knows that? Those things are stupid. Nobody wants
Those were the good old
virtualization.
days. We were running zones in production. We were just spinning up. We were cloning zones and spinning them up. We had okay. I'm getting nostalgic here.
Anyways,
No, good containers done well. But the Dell people are like, why are they figuring that? I'm like, they have the cool people, right? They had Twitter at the time. They have the cool people playing around in their utility. They know what people are asking for.
Yeah.
And they're going to move faster just because they have people asking the smart questions.
right.
And that's
Well,
a
Yeah.
big
And
deal.
that's where Netflix really gave them a big advantage, having Netflix out there, because Netflix has really solid engineering.
Hmm.
Imagine what AWS would look like if Netflix hadn't told them to do a few things.
Yeah. Or if Netflix didn't open source a few services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, these are interesting stories. I'm going to wrap us up with an Amazon crazy service segue.
Nice.
A couple of weeks ago, they introduced something called Honey Code,
I saw that.
which is it's read like Access. If you remember Access and Visual Basic, it was basically their own version of that. But I'm like, dude, this is completely unacceptable. The name is way too close to Honeycomb, and so I was ranting off about them, not for the product being good. It's like this crazy experimental form builder, but picking, their lawyers should know better than to pick a product name that's that close to another business. And so I was very indignant on Honeycomb's behalf. And my segue is 2 weeks we have Charity Majors, who's going to come and talk about observability. Rocky, I was able to make that connection. Thank you.
Yay.
For the suggestion.
job.
And so we go from Amazon to Charity in like 2 steps. We're perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you. I'm moving the notices for these sessions over to the Cloud 2030 topic. And so we'll have a place where we can post those and chat and do other things like that. So check that out. I'm super excited about that as a forming network. And then we're doing Thursdays. We're going to talk about cloud strategy stuff on Thursday evenings. So 3 p.m. Pacific, 5. We're starting with a 2-hour session with the Cloud 2020 retrospective.
How do we get on the invite list?
If you go to cloud2030.mn.co.
MN as in Minnesota?
Yeah, Mighty Networks. That's a weekly series we're spinning up. And it's just a whole community. So my goal here is that we're going to start discussions. There'll be a summit in November after Election Day, where we actually sort of like try and codify a Cloud 2030 manifesto or mission statement. But then we're collecting people to keep talking about infrastructure. There's some start there. I wrote a mission statement for it, and we'll keep refining it as people come into the community. But it's you'll appreciate. I said we're neither the Rebel Alliance trying to Death Star the major providers, nor the well, now I'm blanking on my so beautiful. Why am I blanking on this? Star Wars, the Star Wars, the bad, the bad.
Mandalorian?
No, the bad, the
one with Natalie Portman.
No, yeah, I know you like that one the best, but
baseball.
Trying to Alderaan. Anyway, they're trying to Alderaan all the on-premises sites.
The Death Star.
The Death Star. No, who owns the Death Star? It's the.
Oh, I have no idea.
No,
and I just watched the
Admiral,
Death Star,
whatever.
Yeah, no, they
Darth Vader, the dark side.
No, it's the.
I gotta drop everybody. I'll catch you all
Folks
later.
on the other side of the alliance.
Thank you for having me on.
It's not the Enterprise. It's the. My God, it just completely evacuated from my brain. Empire. And I knew NE something. It's not the Empire trying to Alderaan all of the on-premises legacy providers either. We're trying to live the dream and figure out the future. So, all right, everybody. Wow, that was sad. I just completely lost it. I have to tattoo that on my hand or something. Everybody have a good week. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye. Afternoon, Rob.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. How's everything?
Good. Very good. Been running around trying to start cloud stuff, so the Cloud 2030 pieces. So
nice.
That has been. Chris, I'm about to move you to full panelist. Hold on. I clicked the wrong button. Yeah, I'm super excited about the Cloud 2030 stuff and the platform. for it. So I
Cool.
think there's some.
Yeah, me too. I'm a little nonplussed with the client, but I think I just need to learn it better.
That's what I've been getting that feedback. People are like, this, I don't, is it Twitter? Is it Slack? Is it, and so
Well,
we're
No, my biggest complaint is that I have to go root around in my email and find the invitation to go find the room again. When I navigate away from the client, it doesn't assume I'd like to go back to the conversations I've already joined, which is a little
that's
strange.
interesting. Okay. Have you tried it on your phone?
I'm using it on my iPad.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's the same. I haven't done as much on my phone. I've been sort of responding to chats as we go, and we'll see. I'm very optimistic about it, but I haven't been using it for other things. So this is sort of a dive in and then hope everything works strategy.
Cool.
Hey, Chris.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. If I did, no one would listen.
Very professional looking setup.
That's
It's a very
Thank you.
professional looking setup, Chris.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to work my camera game out a little bit better, and I'm not sure I'm doing myself much good. We'll see.
Yeah, but Chris, you can move that camera away from the Florida Gator symbol or flag. That'd be a nice spot. We in Georgia don't like. We don't. Hey, Gator meat goes really well here, brother.
I can just have that up the whole time.
yeah.
I like some Gator meat.
It tastes all right, I guess. I mean, whatever. Teach their
First rule of pet peeves is never reveal your pet peeves. Or team affiliations, maybe.
own. I'm used to hearing all kinds of craziness. Like growing up, like in Florida during the 90s, right? With Spurrier and everything. And Bobby Bowden going back and forth. Like, I've gotten to so many, like, almost fist fights over, football talk before. It's water off the back nowadays.
Makes sense.
Only in SEC country can you do that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Fighting words. That's awesome.
Hey, it's the only conference that has a game that officially is no longer named the largest cocktail party.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
It's officially not named that.
They changed the name. It was officially named or branded as the largest cocktail party in the world, the Georgia-Florida game. But they perceived, problem of that has been changed. But supposedly that was supposed to cut back on the drinking. I don't think that helped at all. No.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the most sophisticated level of drinking I've seen in my years is the UVA folks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they put their alcohol in their vodka in Ziploc bags and put it in their jackets. So they dress with blazers to games, and their alcohol is in the Ziploc bag. By Coke.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought that was a very level of sophistication.
See, I went to a UNC game once, and I walked into the men's room, and the trash can was just overflowing with mini bottles. So I thought that was just like an ultimate, like, you should just go ahead and monetize this, folks.
Yes.
Like, people are going to do this anyway. Yeah, mini bottles. They were just bringing, because they don't check your pockets or anything, right? Like, it's all plastic. Metal detector won't ever go off, right? Like,
That's true.
So, the cheap plastic bottles, you buy like the 12-pack of, people would just throw a couple in each pocket.
Yeah, but that completely blows my mind on college drinking. It's like, it's supposed to be Mad Dog 2020 and the cheapest vodka you can get.
Oh
So.
no! Like I was sitting in the season ticket section.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, no, that's where the good stuff is.
No, man.
This is the alumni. The alumni section is all mini. Is all airport bottles.
Yeah, well,
I'm not hearing.
you're an SEC country at LSU. This is I spent 5 years in Baton Rouge. At LSU, you can't buy your way into season tickets. So if you come in there in town
That's true.
and you're a big wig and you're trying to move a business there and you say to the Chamber of Commerce, hey, can we get some season tickets for our executive team? They're like, no. It's the only place I've ever seen where you can't buy your way into something. That's how involved alumni are in the SEC. I think Penn State is probably the largest non-SEC school, or Michigan, that I've seen that's like that. I mean,
Ohio State's
Penn
kind of like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah.
Penn State. I mean, when Penn State got the fine because of Paterno and the whole
Oh
thing,
yeah.
the alumni said, "We got it." I mean, that's just, it was a $50 million fine, and the alumni and the booster said, "We got it."
Oh,
Dang. Dang. Talk about not making an impact.
No.
Yeah.
no,
Wow.
see, Texas
Okay.
Texas is not that different from that perspective.
Oh, you guys are weird. You're the only state that I know that people get in trouble for offering jobs to high school parents. Like, so, you
Mhm.
recruit a kid in a different district and you offer the parents a job in the local district to get the kid to come play at your high school. That's a whole nother level.
That's next level high school.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was crazy playing football in Florida my freshman year, but like Texas is a whole nother level.
Yeah. So I was in the band. They tried to recruit me into football, and I politely declined. I really didn't want to get hit. And they're like, no, it's not you can do both. You just run down onto the field at halftime playing the band, and and then just go switch back into your uniforms. Not a big deal. Yeah.
Nice.
They didn't promise you the don't get hit. The don't get
No,
hit.
Exactly.
no.
That's what immediately what I was thinking. I'm like, what about getting hit when you're playing in the band?
Mhm.
Remember the conversation?
Well, yeah. As long as yeah. So I'll leave that be. But yeah, as long as you're not in the Rice band and making fun of the Texas A&M guys, I think you're okay.
Yeah, you're probably fine. I imagine anybody making fun of any Texas A&M folk are probably going to get a hard time getting out of that stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this quorum today, Rob? Have we? I know we just started these back up, so I'm not sure how much attendance we'll have.
Yeah. So we get up to about 12. Depends. I actually expected Chris to bring in a whole bunch of people. So
Yeah, well, apparently I didn't do a good
Chris?
job marketing this for you.
Where's your followers, man?
I don't know, man. They read the blog post.
the blog post was excellent. Blog post was excellent. And Quinny Pig didn't amplify either. So
No, he did. He did.
All right.
Oh no, he did not amplify this. No. He amplified the blog post though.
In your story, yep.
Yeah.
Some of it I think is Dog Days of Summer.
Well, he'd follow me over.
Yeah.
Yeah. See.
Is that your coffee?
We talked about it this morning. Yeah, that's my coffee. We talked about it this morning on my live stream, so can't beat that, man.
That's
Doing
awesome.
my best.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. And this is right. I there's a degree of it's summer. I don't know if that matters anymore.
I know there's a lot of people on PTO right now. There's actually an email thread right now going on in my internal circle. Should we cancel our weekly meeting tomorrow?
That's I keep talking about it for us. It's like, should we just force people to take a couple days in the middle of this stuff just because we're not going anywhere, so people don't want to stop working. But
Friday. I just read an HBR post. They said, like, even if you're not going anywhere, still take your vacation days, right? Like it's imperative that you take them. But Friday is Red Hat shutting down day, Red Hat recharge day. So we've done
Oh,
that
nice.
the past 3 months, I think. I don't know when the next one is planned or if another one is planned, but they definitely did it for the summer quarters for sure.
Nice.
So yeah. So yeah,
I guess I
Klaus.
Go ahead.
Klaus says he reads the newsletter and is like, yeah, the newsletter just started back up. So thank you for reading.
Been a nice service. Just your news, like you are. How much time do you spend reading news?
So, I mean, it used to be hours and hours and hours a week, but now it's literally just, in my downtime, I'll just go through my filtered news, and it's racked and stacked in a way that, thanks to my newsreader, it's able to provide me the news that would get into the newsletter in general.
Okay.
I've got it tuned in and dialed in enough to where it's just like, well, that's been 30, 45 minutes a day tops. I'm good, but I read more news than that every day. I guarantee it.
Makes
So.
sense. Yeah, I like seeing the curated. You're doing. a
Yeah,
good
I mean,
job finding good stuff.
it's hard to find quality content. There's plenty of content. It's hard to find quality content.
Yeah. What do you? Is there something specific that you key off on? I'm always curious.
So I use an RSS reader. It's called iKnowReader. So it actually adds in I actually pay for it. So the professional edition or whatever, so I can get over 500 feeds, which that by itself tells you how much news I'm actually like filtering through. So that's one way to filter it, it's just the RSS feed you read from, but then they have a way to, remove all duplicate entries. So like if somebody posts a press release to 700 blogs, it's just one post, and they also have a way to tell you how popular or how much traffic a particular post is getting across their own platform. So, or across analytics in general that they're being able to cobble together. So it's a very, very easy and nice way for me to be like, I can read the news now sanely and in a filtered way and removing all the duplication and scrolling and unnecessary just clicking. So yeah, it's really nice. I've got the same setup on my phone, iPad, and computer. It's all just right in one little app called iKnowReader. I will post a link to it right now if you don't mind.
Thank you.
I'm sure they have an affiliate program that I'm losing out on tens of cents from, but whatever.
And it's in the newsletter. There you go.
That's right. I did mention it in the newsletter this week because it is a very good service and people should subscribe to it, to be honest with you. So yeah,